Morning guys, I'm Dave Canterbury with the Pathfinder School. I tried to do the lavalier thing today because it's still real windy out, but I wanted to try to avoid some of the wind noise because I'm going to be in the open some on this video. What I wanted to discuss a little bit today was how to identify some tree species in the winter when the leaves are gone, or in the winter months or the later months of the year. And I think it's important that we can identify trees sometimes even from a distance in case we're looking for a resource we want to walk to. We've talked about how important I believe trees are as a resource. We build from them, we manufacture from them, we can make all of our handles from them. They provide food, they provide medicine, and they provide material. So trees are a very important resource for us to understand, and one of the most uninformed or uneducated or unlearned resources that we have available to us as far as the survival and bushcraft community, in my opinion. So looking out on this landscape right now, I can look at the trees behind me and tell you that most of those trees are oaks. And the reason I can tell you that is, first of all, the canopy is outspread. It doesn't really come together, it spreads out at the top, and oaks are notorious for that. The other thing I can look at is oaks are generally one of the last trees to lose their leaves in the wintertime. So if you see clusters of brown leaves left on the trees, most of the time those are going to be oaks. Now they could be red oaks or they could be white oaks, and that can make a difference from a manufacturing and a medicinal standpoint. But at least you know that there are oaks in the area. You can go up, look at the leaves on the ground, or cut into the bark to see if it's red oak on the inside or white oak by looking underneath that cambium layer at the tree itself. The red oaks are going to be better building material, and the white oaks are going to be better medicinally. But that's an easy way to kind of identify an oak off in the distance by looking at it, is by looking at the canopy and looking for leaves left on the trees. Okay, so let's talk about poplar type trees. We're going to talk about tulip poplar, even though tulip poplar is not truly a poplar. It's a magnolia, but it grows and acts the same as a poplar as far as how it's used, how well it carves, what great tinder material it makes, and how it actually is shaped and the way it looks, okay? So we're going to talk about poplars in general, but these are tulip poplars I'm going to show you. If you look back behind me, there are some oaks back there. There is a hickory back there. But if you look at the trees that look like this, basically the lower branches are gone for the most part. They've dropped their lower branches. Poplars are notorious for that. Even aspens do that. And it grows in almost a spade shape toward the top. And if you look, there's a cluster of 4 there, 2 there, and 1 right back there, 1, 2, 3 back there actually. Those are all tulip poplars. And if you're looking off in a distance, oftentimes, if there's any adult tulip poplars, they'll be the tallest tree that you may see in the line of trees. If you look at a row of trees from a ridge off in the distance, oftentimes those trees with that spade shape will be the tallest trees because the tulip poplar is the tallest growing tree in the eastern woodlands. It grows to 135 feet. It's a very fast growing tree. So that's what I'm looking for. If I'm out in the woods and I'm scanning the horizon, I'm looking for tulip poplars. I'm looking for the tallest trees out there. If I don't see anything up high that looks like a poplar, like we have a big oak right here in front of us, it's all spread out, that's taller than any of the poplars are because these are saplings for the most part. Then I look at the canopy itself. Then I'm going to walk up and look at the bark last, but that's going to tell me that's a poplar type tree. I happen to know that what grows out here is mainly tulip poplar and sawtooth aspen. I'll show you a little bit of difference in those two by looking at the tree itself here in a few minutes. But that's how I identify a poplar family tree. Okay, so even though hickory is not really one of my top 5 trees, only because it's not as medicinal as some of the other trees are, hickory is a good resource for building material. It's a very important resource for handle material. Hickory and ash make about the best tool handle material. Hickory is pretty easy to identify in a larger tree because it's going to have scaly bark. You have shag bark hickory, shell bark hickory, and again, I'm not being real particular with species here. I'm talking more in a family orientation when it comes to these trees. But most of your hickories, as they get bigger, you're going to find that the bark is separating from the tree, like this. If you look behind me, there's a couple examples of nice hickories back there. One of them's pretty much standing dead. The one behind it's still alive for sure. But both of them have the bark separating from the tree. And there are several hickories here, and there are several oaks in here. The oaks are easier to identify from a distance because, again, they have the leaves left on them for the most part. And the hickories do not. The hickories, the leaves are gone, but the bark is the dead giveaway on a larger hickory. And you can walk around and find smaller hickories in this grove as well. And I'll show you what the smaller hickories look like compared to the big ones here in just a minute. Okay, this tree here is an immature hickory. This is a young sapling hickory tree. And you can already see it's starting to get those long pieces of bark. You can see the long, narrow splits in the bark here, which is where it's going to peel up and peel off as this tree gets bigger. So it's fairly easy to identify a young hickory because it really looks like a smaller version of a large one that the bark hasn't peeled up on yet. And some trees are difficult to tell the saplings from the larger trees because the bark looks completely different. Cottonwoods are a really good example of that. Older cottonwoods look completely different than young cottonwoods do. But hickory pretty much looks the same other than the bark peeling up when it's small and young as it does when it's an adult tree. I really don't know any other way to tell you how to identify hickory without cutting into it compared to, you know, something other sapling out here. But that's how I can tell. I can tell a little bit by looking at the way the tree branches look and how it grows, but it's hard for me to explain that to you. That's something that you will develop with personal experience of being around the trees. All right, I kind of want to take a stab and explain to you how to identify a small hickory without just looking at the bark. And I was coming down this trail and I saw this tree and I knew it was a hickory as soon as I saw it, a sapling. And I talked to you about how the branches grow. So we're going to walk back here and look at it, but hickories tend to grow with the branches fairly parallel to the ground. Generally they'll hook a little bit, but they generally grow out this way, kind of like this on the tree. And you'll notice that when we walk up to this tree, they don't grow like this, like normal trees do with the branches going up. They kind of grow straight out like this, and kind of crooked. I'm going to show you one right back here. Hopefully you'll understand. Okay, so hopefully you can see this sapling, and you can see what I'm talking about, how the branches are growing straight out from the tree, almost parallel to the ground. And hickories will almost always do that when they're young. Okay, so here's another small hickory. And again, you can see how when you go up, there's a branch almost at an L 90-degree cut there out across a trail. And if you look up the tree, there's a lot of other branches that are doing that same thing. They're growing almost 90 degrees off the tree. They're not growing up in the air, they're spreading wide. And that's kind of the way younger hickories grow. Okay, so what I want to show you here real quick is, this is a poplar. And if you look at this poplar, there's several places on the side of that tree where branches have fallen off and died, so that the tree could achieve maximum photosynthesis for the branches that are up high above the canopy. And that's what poplars do. They drop their lower branches. So when you see scars along the tree on the trunk, that's probably going to be some type of poplar family tree. Again, with the exception being tulip poplar, which is actually a magnolia, but it acts and looks just like a poplar other than the leaves. So look for those branch scars on the side of the tree and you'll know that you're dealing with a poplar family tree. Now these scars are pretty much round or eye-shaped. I'm going to show you some scars on an aspen tree, and they're going to look like a chevron. And that's how you can tell the difference between a poplar and an aspen. All right, this is an aspen. And you can see that distinct chevron where it's dropped that branch. And it looks very similar to a tulip poplar. The bark is smooth on this tree. This is only about an 8-9 inch diameter tree, but it's got a lighter color than tulip poplar does. It's almost got a pinkish gray hue to it. It has the same properties as the tulip poplar. So if you find this tree, you just understand the difference, that this is not tulip poplar or magnolia. This is a true poplar, and it's an aspen. Okay, so this tree behind me here that just looks like a big train wreck, looks like something out of a horror movie, is a locust tree. Locust trees are real easy because they're going to have thorns on them. Honey locust, black locust, all of those trees are going to have thorns on them. So when you walk up to the tree, you're going to see it. You'll also sometimes see some of the seed pods, which are usually long and narrow, almost like a green bean pod, still left in the tree. And usually when you look at the trunk, you can see the big masses on the trunk from a long ways away of thorns or needles. So we'll go up and take a closer look at this one here real quick. Okay, so here's a closer look at our friend the locust tree here. And you can see the masses of thorns on that tree. I don't really talk too much about the locust tree medicinally, although it does have tannins in it. It is a hardwood with tannins in it. But it's kind of a pain to process because of all the thorns. However, it does make good fish hooks. And the other great thing about the locust tree is because it drops those seed pods, it seems to be a deer attractant to beat any, just about, in a lot of ways, especially if you've only got one area that's got a few locusts around a larger piece of property or land. It's going to be a deer highway. And the area that I'm looking at right here around this tree is trampled. There, it looks like there's bedding areas in here. It's all trampled down where it's been walked on. The seed pods are on the ground, are all chewed up from the deer getting in there trying to eat the seeds. So this is a prime place for hunting for larger game. Oh, here's just a little bit of a close-up of one of the seed pods from this locust tree, so you can see what it looks like. It looks very much like a green bean pod that's brown, and the seeds are inside. Okay, you can see those indentions right there where the seeds inside that pod. All right, so this tree back here behind me is an adult sassafras, and it doesn't matter whether it's a small one or a large one. They never grow straight, and they always grow all funky. You can see how that one's got one branch coming out. It's twisted about 6 different times in 3 different directions. That's indicative of sassafras. That's the way it grows. Even the smaller ones will never be just a straight tree. They're always going to grow canted off to one side, twist around things. That's the way sassafras grows. So it's fairly easy to identify. And then all you have to do is cut into the bark and smell it. If it's got that sarsaparilla root beer smell to it, you know it's a sassafras. They're harder to identify from a long ways off, but once you get pretty close to them or in a line of trees, it's easy to pick them out.